So I want to discuss a very specific storyline going on in Cobra Kai. First of all, if you are not caught up with Cobra Kai Season 6, Part 1 and Part 2, the first 10 episodes of Season 6, I would highly recommend that you go catch up because we're going to be talking about events that happen in these 10 episodes and what may or may not transpire in Part 3. Now, I did do a review on Cobra Kai Season 6 Part 2 and Part 1 when that came out a few months ago, as well as I did my prediction for Part 3, and that prediction video is up, and check it out because maybe I got some things right. I don't know. We'll find out. But I want to discuss one plot thread that I did not talk about in that predictions video that I see people talking about, and that is the story of Tory's mom. Now, Tory's mom with a Y, Tory with a Y's mom, died in Cobra Kai Season 6, Episode 5, the last episode before the break back in the summertime. And as a result of her mom dying and her seeing and feeling that she would never get a right, proper, fair shot at Miyagi-Do, she rejoined Cobra Kai. Now, while they did briefly discuss Tory's mom, both Robbie and John Kreese had conversations with Tory and Samantha in Season 6, Part 2, it was not really a focal point. Now, there were a lot of leaks that came out prior to Part 2 airing, and a lot of them were fake, and a couple of them were real. One of the fake ones was that, and this is speculation that had gone on since actually the summertime, that Tory's mom was actually murdered. And a lot of people seem to have this theory that John Kreese is the one that killed Tory's mom to manipulate her into getting her emotionally fragile so she would jump over to Cobra Kai. Now, that became a theory. And then along the way, other fans have said, well, maybe Tory's mom was murdered, but not by John Kreese, by Terry Silver. And of course, Part 2 revealed that Terry Silver had been out of jail for at least 3 months, so the possibility of that happening wasn't totally out of the question. However, I don't believe that to be the case. Let me go over why I don't think that's the case. Number one, John Kreese is, without question, a very damaged man. He is a man who's had a very traumatic life, very manipulative guy, but also a guy who has seen war and has seen death, and I can't picture John Kreese, even at his absolute worst, doing something like that because, number one, he actually cares about Tory. You can see that in Martin Kove's performance. He does care about her, even though he pushes her too hard, like how he does with people like Johnny Lawrence when he was a kid, etc. And so there's that part of the story. And also, John Kreese killing a woman who was already sick. You have to remember, Tory's mom was already sick. There were multiple scenes of Tory talking to doctors and people like that, nurses, about her mom's condition. So for Kreese to have killed Tory's mom and just, there's no guarantee that if he murdered this woman, which is a really serious crime, that then again, this is also Cobra Kai, and serious crimes are never that serious, it seems, on this show. But you get my point. For him to do that seems very uncharacteristic of Kreese. Yes, he's not a good guy. He's not a benevolent person like Miyagi and Daniel. But for him to just murder an innocent woman, like, it's not like he was in Vietnam fighting for his life here. That's not the same thing. And also, we know, based on Martin Kove's performance, as well as how the show's been going, that there's a high probability, if not a guarantee, not Martin Kove's performance, I meant to say his interviews, that Kreese will get some kind of redemption sometime in Part 3. Whether it be he apologizes to Johnny, or they work together to take out the greater enemy, Terry Silver. There's a lot of ways they can go about it, but the idea of the show ending with Kreese being the evil of Cobra Kai is probably not going down. Without question, I think Terry's reintroduction in Part 3 was to make him, at least as far as the senseis go, except for Sensei Wolf, the primary antagonist and villain of the series. Kreese is going to have to work with Johnny and Daniel and Chosen and Sensei Kim to beat Terry Silver if they decide to work together. But I think that they will because of how much pressure and how much money Terry Silver has. So I don't think John Kreese killed Tory's mom. And I also don't think Terry Silver killed Tory's mom. Because even though there was a lot of moments with Terry and Tory in season 5, the bond wasn't there. Silver and Kenny Payne seemed to have a much stronger sort of friendship. And they kind of blew that up in episode 9. And that wasn't going to happen. But Terry Silver is a lot more likely to put a hit on somebody or have them killed than John Kreese, just because of the fact that Terry Silver's wealthy and can do that kind of stuff. I mean, let's not forget they trapped Daniel LaRusso in a dog cage in episode 7 for a while. But I still don't think Terry Silver had Tory's mom killed. Just because what would that accomplish? Just, I'm going to torture you by committing murder? Why have her killed if there are other people, like, for example, John Kreese himself, he could have had killed? There's a lot of things they could have done to people that are a lot more of a threat to Terry Silver than Tory. Tory's not really a threat to him. She's a threat to maybe the Iron Dragons championship, but I've never sensed that Tory, Nichols, and Terry Silver are arch rivals. So I don't think that's the case either. I think fans might be reading a bit too much into this. I understand that the probability of somebody having a hit put on them and killed at this point in Cobra Kai, with how crazy the bar has been set, I feel like that, while possible, is it really likely or plausible? I don't think so. And I understand people having suspicions. I am not saying that I think people are dumb for suggesting that. I just think that in this particular case, I don't think that's what's going on here. Because of the fact that Tory's mom was already sick, and because of the fact that the nurse, if I remember correctly in episode 5, remember, Tory was mad because the nurse told her she was going to be fine, she was getting better, and then she just died. That happens in real life. I've witnessed it with my own family members. They're sick, the doctor tells you they're getting better shortly after they die. The human body is very unpredictable when it's being put through pain, torture, and illness. You're going to feel great one day and feel terrible the next. So I think the events of Tory's mom dying were circumstantial to her ending up on Cobra Kai, along with her connection with Kreese, her loyalty to him, and of course the fact that she felt like the LaRussos were always going to pick Samantha over her to be team captain. But the idea of Terry or Kreese having her mom killed, I just don't see that being the case. And they didn't even mention it in part 2. So unless they're planning some kind of shocker reveal for part 3 that it was a murder, I just don't see what that would add to the show. I don't see what that would add this late in the game. We're only 5 episodes left, and they have to close out a lot of storylines. And when it comes to Tory, adding a new storyline about who killed her mom this late in the game does not make much sense. On the contrary, I think having Tory overcome the Iron Dragons and become the champion in part 3, when they eventually resume the Sekai Taikai, that is her story. Because then she can make her mom proud. She can do it for her mother. She can fight through the pain, which is what Johnny tried to explain to Daniel in episode 5. She was working through the pain. Don't just stop the fight. Let her work through the pain. Because it's true. For some people, they cope differently. For some people, they cope with loss by working, whether it be martial arts or even your day job. It helps you get through it while being productive. And that's Johnny's entire thing, and he's right. He is right. So, no, I do not think Tory's mom was murdered. I could be wrong, but I don't think so. I think that plot thread, that ship has sailed. She died of natural causes because she was sick. But it definitely changed Tory's life because now she understands loss. And in some ways, it's going to make her even tougher than she already was. What do you think? Let me know.